Good evening, folks at Film Fanatic. This is Jason D coming live from Film Fanatic headquarters. I've been chomping at the bit with lots of new ideas. One of the main things is I got a whole bunch of new movies this past Saturday. So I've been watching them and I've been making some pretty good progress in watching a lot of the new movies. But I don't know, I get really eager, I get really excited about doing more videos around my purchases. And, especially around certain films that I had been really looking forward to buying and movies that I was anticipating on buying, movies that I had been looking into buying for quite a while. So that was the case with a few of these movies, so very, very excited. So I went to a big sale. I mentioned it in some previous videos, but I mentioned that I had gone to a big sale on Saturday. We had a kind of a nasty hurricane pass through Maine, and luckily it was fairly mild for the most part. We just had some power outages and things like that, but nothing, too horrendously bad. There weren't any major floods or anything of that nature that at least that I was aware of. But I did, lost power for a few hours, about 5 hours. But I went to his big sale on Saturday to Opros Video, and then I went totally. It was an impromptu thing because our power was out, and my folks had called me probably about, I don't know, a half hour after I got home from Belfast, and they were like, "Hey, you want to go up to Bangor and get some Chinese food?" So I was like, "That sounds perfect. Let's just go." And I got in my car and we just went, no plan or anything, and it was great. It was awesome. But we ended up going to Bull Moose and spent some more money, and I got some movies, and it was great. I was super stoked. I got some movies I've been wanting to see for a while. I got some movies that I've been wanting to get to for a while, as far as seeing them again and seeing them for the first time on Blu-ray. And it was interesting. The two movies that I've been wanting to get for actually a little while, one in particular was one that I've been wanting to get for a very long time, and I had never seen it on Blu-ray, and that is John Carpenter's Halloween. I finally got that on Blu-ray. Many reasons as to why I never got it on Blu-ray for some stupid reason. One of the greatest slasher movies of all time, and I had the craziest thing is I had never even seen it on Blu-ray, even just in passing. So it was great, and I finally found a really great copy of it, and it's amazing, and I was just totally blown away. And the other movie that I've been really eagerly wanting to see on Blu-ray, which again I've never seen, and on Blu-ray, and I've seen it twice. I saw it in the theater, and then I rented it on DVD, and that is this movie here, Halloween Ends. This is, well, at least this is to a degree. This is what we're told, that this is like the final Halloween movie in the franchise. I don't believe it's going to be the last movie, but we'll see. But anyway, I had been wanting to see this movie again on Blu-ray. When I saw Halloween Ends in the theater, I was expecting. I had very, very low expectations. Of course, this movie is the third movie that was directed by David Allen Green, who did three Halloween movies, it kind of rebooted the franchise. I'm not a huge fan of those movies. There's elements of Halloween and in Halloween Kills that are good. I think there is some there's some really great slasher moments, some great slasher tropes, if you will. And I like, to a degree, it has a little bit of a modern feel. But for the most part, especially Halloween Kills, which I think is really brutal, and the kills are really pretty fantastic. But story wise and character wise, I feel like they. I think David Allen Green was legitimately trying to do something different with this new kind of incarnation of Halloween, and also trying to contribute something a little bit different for the franchise. And I think with the first two movies, he definitely threw a lot of things in, a lot of ingredients at you. But I feel like a lot of the stuff wasn't really pulled off, and the loose ends were not really, you know, nothing was seamlessly tied together. I felt, and I felt, well, especially with Halloween Kills, when it came to the story, or the story of Haddonfield, they they really tried to. I feel like what they tried to do was something really ambitious. They tried to incorporate generations of the town and all of the characters, kind of more or less that we've seen throughout these movies. And there are so many characters. There were so many different themes kind of thrown around, and it just got really bogged down by that. And I felt like nothing really had any weight to it or depth to it. And I felt a lot of the characters were not very empathetic. You didn't really have any. I know for me, I didn't really care about them. I wasn't really, you know, being pulled into having much sympathy for them and the story, and it felt like it was a little bit convoluted. I thought it was cool that they were trying something different and, like I said, something kind of ambitious. But I kind of had this feeling that, or was kind of hoping that they would do something either to make a new trilogy. I was kind of envisioning for them to go back to the real bare bones basics of just really delivering a really good slasher film. Where you just have enough characterization and really good kills and really, really good atmosphere. And I felt like it had elements of that, but not. But it got bogged down by a lot of other things. And I felt like for the franchise to maybe do something successful, it would have to go either like kind of a return to like basics, like the original John Carpenter film, or even for that matter, uh, you know, uh, the second one, Halloween 2, real stripped down, but really good slasher, a really good slasher film or films. Or it would, I felt like, okay, there'd be two choices. It could go back to the old school route, or it could do something, or in order to make something unique and different and to contribute to the franchise, have a story or a film that, or a series of films that were totally bonkers, totally crazy, and just completely to a degree like their own universe. So I felt like for it to be successful, it would have to go from either one extreme or the next. And I kind of feel like, you know, either it could have gone the way of, like, say, the John Carpenter version or the 78 version, or Season of the Witch, Halloween 3, which is one of my favorite in the franchises. And that movie is so unique and so different, so strange and bizarre, and so awesome and so original. And they legitimately took a big chance, and it backfired because that movie was not successful. But it's such an amazing movie, and I felt like, okay, going forward, this is probably what they'll have to do, either of these two things. And so when Halloween Ends came out, it was a huge topic of controversy. People, basically everybody and their grandmother, uh, shit on this movie, in every way you possibly can. The critics even destroyed it. Um, and the movie had initially, like the first day or two of its opening, it did pretty good business, but then it just plummeted, and it just died. It died completely in the theater. And what David Allen Green did with the Halloween movies, like the first two, especially Halloween Kills, I believe that Halloween Kills might be the most successful movie in the entire franchise, like massively popular, which is crazy. But, and both of those movies were highly financially successful. So for this franchise to essentially crash and burn was crazy. But, I wanted to see it. I was driven to see it anyway, and I figured, what the hell? So I went to the theater expecting to probably not like it, but I also was expecting to see something probably different and maybe so something possibly so kind of off-putting that it would have been just a turn off or just too outside the box to a degree. Um, or it could have been, or I kind of envisioned it to be like a really bad, like a TV version of it to a degree. Lower budget, and just a lower production value, and just really crappy writing. And but so I went to see it in the theater when it came out. I went to it opening weekend, and to be totally honest, I was really surprised by this movie, and I found myself really enjoying it on a lot of levels. And I was entertained by it, and I thought, okay, it's not a perfect movie, but I liked that they legitimately took a chance. I felt like David Allen Green and Danny McBride, who also was the writer. Danny McBride is also, he's most well known for doing lots of comedies. He's been involved in producing other movies and stuff. But I thought, okay, these guys really tried to do something different, and I think for the most part they succeeded. But the movie itself is, in comparison to a lot of the other films, especially what David Allen Green did before, um, it's pretty bonkers. It's pretty out to lunch as far as where the direction of the film goes, what they do with Michael Myers' character, even Jamie Lee Curtis's character, especially the ending of the film, and introducing this new character um, that really becomes kind of the focus of the story. And again, not not something going you're expecting, not something that I expected. And Rohan Campbell plays Corey Cunningham, who essentially is kind of the lead of the film, and of course stars Jamie Lee Curtis. And his character is so interesting because he's essentially this guy who was like he's a victim of extreme circumstances. And this film, without getting into details of this film, it really gets into this idea of um, this formless or shapeless kind of evil that can inhabit a town or an environment. And it kind of has this degree of like this evil force, or this, I don't know, metaphysical source, metaphysical force, if you will, that is can inhabit anything or anyone to a degree. And and what they do between the two characters of Michael Myers, the Shape, and also um, this new character, Sean Cunningham, that they introduce, is pretty bizarre, pretty crazy, pretty weird. And I was really surprised, and I wasn't sure what the hell when it was happening. And there were moments of where I was watching and I was kind of like, wow, did that really just happen? But then I found myself going for the ride and kind of enjoying it. The other thing about this film is it does two things I think pretty well. Like, I think this movie, like the opening sequence, the music for this film is really great, really really great. And it does not have, like, the way the way that just the way this movie opens, you feel like you're going on a ride and you're not really sure where it's going to go. And you also it's got this very fresh kind of thing about it. And it doesn't seem to rely, especially even like how it starts. There's a really great opening sequence in this film that I think is really really good. A lot of tension, a lot of suspense, and it kind of messes with your expectations. And I thought, wow, like this tonally, it's totally different than any other Halloween movie, and especially the other David Allen Green movies. And it just sets this kind of tone or this vibe that you're going to get a different kind of experience. And I thought it was unique. And the other thing I thought this film does, like especially by the second chapter or so, where Sean Cunningham's character is kind of coming into his own more, and is revealing these darker and darker aspects to his psychology and who he actually is, and how he's kind of tied to the story. Um, it kind of has this really cool, classic, bare bones to a degree slasher vibe, which I thought was cool. Because like the beginning and the end, and there's a lot of other things in a movie that are pretty bizarre. They took a little while to get used to. Pretty unconventional when it comes to especially the mythology, if you will, of Halloween and what we're used to seeing. Um, but I also feel like, with all that being said, the core of it is still a pretty good, like old school slasher film. Especially, like I said, in the second, the third act of the film, and it was kind of an interesting combination of like storytelling, and so I had an interesting view of it when I first saw it. I didn't think it was perfect, but I thought there were things about it that were very interesting, and I definitely felt, even then, I can definitely say that now. For my money, it's definitely the best uh, movie in the Halloween franchise that David Allen Green's done. I think it's definitely the best of the three movies, without a doubt. And it's also it's funny because this movie is so polarizing. Most people hate this movie completely, and it was like when this movie came out, it was literally a firestorm of a pilot of shit that people were putting on this movie. Like it was unbelievable. And so, a lot of it had to do with, obviously, you know, everybody feels inclined to be a movie critic, even if they, casually watch a few movies, or, you know, they they have, a decent movie collection and they're specialists, or they see a lot of movies, and it might be a relatively new thing, but they're not really, say, steeped in film. And basically, it kind of felt like anybody with a microphone or laptop was all of a sudden they were a critic and they were just shitting on this movie. And this is kind of the downside of the digital age. But I think there's more pros than cons around that whole kind of discussion. And then so a couple of months after I saw it in the theater, I remember renting Halloween Ends. I was going to a dinner over at my folks, and that was one of the movies I rented. And my mom had not seen, or my dad, but my mom had not seen any of the newer Halloween movies in years. And but she was open to this, and I said, "This it's actually kind of a interesting, kind of a cool movie," and she really liked it. She actually enjoyed it, and she felt that which was an interesting perspective. Like she hadn't seen any of the other movies, so some of it is kind of out of context, but she kind of knew what the whole film was about within the first 10 minutes. and that there was a good enough enough to a degree backstory before the movie actually starts, so you kind of get an idea, and so it acts pretty well as like a standalone film for the most part, which I thought was very cool. So so the other day I was at Bull Moose Saturday, and I'd been thinking about this movie more and more. Like I'd like this. I was like, really want to see it. Um, at least see it on Blu-ray, and I think I'm gonna just buy it. Fuck it, I'm just gonna buy it. So I bought it, and I watched it again on Saturday. And I found myself enjoying it even more. And I think it's a pretty awesome movie. Way back when the movie came out, it came out last year, not October. It's almost a year old now, which is crazy. But when this movie came out, I remember getting in a few discussions about it, and I hadn't even seen the movie. But well, no, it was I should say after I saw the movie, I got into a couple of discussions with some people on Facebook, and I had said one of the things I had said was I feel like there's some interesting and kind of strange parallels between Halloween Ends and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which, like, again, is one of my all time favorite kind of horror exploitation movies. I love that fucking movie to death. Almost as much as, well, it's pretty much tied. Halloween 3 and John Carpenter's original are my two favorite movies. And I have to say that this one is a second. Halloween Ends is pretty much a second. I like H2O quite a bit. I think that's actually a pretty badass movie. But the rest of them, yeah, they're pretty much dismissible. H2O is actually a really good movie. I saw that for the first time last year, which is kind of crazy. But I have to say, I really enjoyed it. And when I watched them on Saturday, I watched them both back to back. I watched Halloween, and then I watched Halloween Ends. And it was kind of an interesting, where I watched the oldest one, and then I watched the newest one back to back. And it was kind of interesting, where there's like, Michael Myers essentially in the first film is like 18 or 17 years old. Or, yeah, 18 years old. And then in Halloween Ends, he's like 73 or 74 years old. So it's kind of interesting where you see, like, wow, like there's this big massive jump. But it kind of worked. And um, I kind of liked that Halloween Ends was so different in a lot of ways. But yet, like, again, at its core, it's kind of an old school slasher film. So interesting, interesting thing. But like what I was saying before, when I had seen the movie and I got into a couple little debates about this film, and I basically, tried to stick up for it to a degree because I was like, people are bashing on this movie to the point of where it's just kind of absurd. And it's whatever. People can say whatever they want, but I had said that I think that there's a lot of weird and strange parallels between Halloween Ends and Season of the Witch, Halloween 3. And the reason I feel like there's all these strange parallels is that both of those movies, both movies were hated and despised by the public. Nobody saw those fucking movies, especially Season of the Witch. Critics across the board trashed basically both movies. And 5 years, like, case in point, Halloween Season of the Witch. A couple of years go by, a few years go by. Halloween Season of the Witch comes out on DVD or VHS. Few folks start seeing it after it's bombed in the theater. After everybody just basically shit on it and everybody stayed away. It starts gaining this traction, and then within 20 years, 15, 20 years, it's now looked at as this like underground classic. And people now love this fucking movie. And if you see it, if you see it online, people talk about it all the time and saying, this movie is like one of the best in the franchise, one of the best kind of horror exploitation movies. And it's totally has moved into an area where it's got this huge cult status. It's a huge Blu-ray. It's been reissued many times. A lot of companies have put it out. It gets all these royal treatments on Blu-ray now. It's even on 4K. All of this stuff. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how that movie has found a huge kind of life. And I'm glad that it has, because it's a killer movie. And not that I'm saying it's going to follow, like, not that I'm really saying Halloween Ends is necessarily going to follow that same trajectory. But I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I would not be surprised if, a few years down the road, this movie will gain an audience and people will be like, you know what? And there are similarities between both movies, because on paper, Halloween Ends is kind of batshit crazy when you compare it to the rest of the Halloween universe. When you take Halloween Season of the Witch, it's completely batshit crazy if you compare it. And that one especially has nothing, literally nothing to do with the universe. And to a degree, Halloween Ends takes all of the pre-prescribed things, or the things that we've seen, or things that we've learned about the story throughout all of these decades that these movies have been popular, from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000-ish. I mean, like 3 or 4 decades, which is crazy. And it's taken all of those kind of things that we've learned and that we kind of understand, and totally fucks with it. Totally fucks with it, turns it kind of on its head, and kind of messes with your expectations. And so, in that degree, I feel like there is a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if Halloween Ends gains some momentum. I even did kind of see that, like within 6 months or 7 months that this movie came out, I started seeing people giving it pretty decent reviews. I have seen a few people, YouTube guys that I like, that have actually come out and said some really good things about this. When they were, the only voices in the universe saying positive things. So very interesting. And I have seen people kind of talk more positively about Halloween Ends. So very interesting, though. Very interesting whole story around this film. The Blu-ray is really great. I'm very excited. The special features are okay. There's like an hour and a half of special features. And it's kind of like your standard behind the scenes kind of thing, but it goes in a little bit more detail than your regular standard behind the scenes thing. And it is kind of interesting. It is worth having. It's not terrific. I was hoping that there would be more, especially because this was kind of expensive. But the transfer of this film on Blu-ray, all around, from a production standpoint, is amazing on Blu-ray. So from that on, from that perspective, I'm super excited that I bought this. So it's totally worth it. So yeah, I highly recommend this movie. If you want something totally different and something kind of fresh, check out Halloween Ends, and especially if you get a chance to see it on Blu-ray. This is the best way to see it and best way to go. So this is Jason Dean. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.